Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are trading in our usual policy papers and market forecasts for something a little different.
A little more magical, I'd say.
Definitely. We're diving into enchanted forests and, yes, formidable pirates. We're looking at the huge critical success of Ye Wuhen's new fantasy novel, Nobal Pan, Legacy of the Lost.
And the source material we've got here, it isn't just positive. It's glowing. A full 5 out of 5 star critical review across the board.
Which is rare.
It's very rare, especially for a genre that, has to balance fresh ideas with a whole lot of nostalgia. That kind of praise really suggests something special is happening here.
So our mission today is pretty laser-focused. We're going to break down exactly why this book is being hailed as what was the term? A delightful re-embodiment of classic adventure.
Right.
We want to figure out the specific things, the structure, the themes that earned it those high marks. Basically give you the shortcut to understanding its appeal.
And I think we should start with the biggest hook. The central idea that just immediately sets this story apart from everything else.
Okay, yeah. If you're a listener who appreciates literary structure, you're going to love this setup. The whole novel is framed by a massive time jump.
Massive.
We're talking 1,000 years after the original adventures of Peter Pan. That's an immediate, audacious invitation to reimagine everything.
It's such a key piece of technique. That time gap lets the author treat the original story not like a prequel, but like real mythology. The review says this is how the author explores that huge central theme. That belief itself holds power.
So we need to understand how that theme gets woven into a fantasy world that's a millennium old.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's unpack that a bit. The foundation of this world.
Yeah.
The critic suggests this 1,000-year timeline. It helps avoid the usual traps of a sequel, right?
It does. A lot of sequels, they really struggle with fan expectations. But jumping a whole millennium gives the author a totally clean slate. It gives the narrative this weight of history, but without the burden of having to resolve every single little thread from the original. The review really points out that the original heroes are now figures of legend. So it's not about finding Peter Pan.
It's about finding his legacy.
Precisely, his legacy.
And speaking of discovery, the source material brings in our protagonist. She's described as a young dreamer, living a pretty ordinary life.
A life in a world that has maybe forgotten its magic, but then her life takes this extraordinary turn when she finds something, an artifact.
And that artifact is the key to everything. She finds an ancient map.
An ancient map, yeah. But the review is very clear. This is not just a tool for navigation. It's called a key to a realm of dreams.
Which suggests the magic didn't just disappear, it just got locked away.
Yeah.
Or maybe it just evolved beyond what normal people could see.
And that immediately ties back into the theme of belief, doesn't it? The map is the key. So the act of actually following it, that's an act of faith.
And this map hints that Neverland still exists, and so does a new legendary hero.
It does, and this is where that legacy part really comes into focus. The hero isn't the original boy who wouldn't grow up. It's his direct descendant.
Nobal Pan.
Nobal Pan. And the critics found that generational dynamic just so successful.
Why, though? Why is using a descendant, this Nobal Pan, a better strategy than just, resurrecting the original Peter?
Well, because it's forward-looking, but it's still respectful of the past. The review praises it because you give readers that comfort of the classic tale Pan Neverland, but you're offering a totally fresh perspective.
And new conflicts.
And completely new conflicts. You get to explore themes of destiny and legacy without just retreading old character arcs. It's a perfect blend of familiarity and, genuine discovery.
That is a brilliant structural move. So you've got the past established, you've got the map as the catalyst, and the legacy in place. But a quest needs conflict. And the review says the threat here is huge.
Oh, absolutely. The tension really ramps up as soon as the protagonist starts uncovering these old secrets. The review talks about the emergence of dark forces that are trying to unravel the world itself.
And not just the physical world. They threaten to engulf both dreams and reality in chaos. That feels like it's not just a physical threat, but a metaphysical one.
Exactly. It ties directly back to that theme. If belief is what powers the world, then the conflict is about eroding that belief.
So it's not just good versus evil.
No, not at all. It's more like a struggle against this kind of entropy that feeds on skepticism and doubt. When our hero goes on her quest, she's joined by a new group of whimsical lost children.
Familiar, but reimagined.
Right, reimagined. And a whole bunch of unexpected allies.
Let's dig into those lost children for a minute, because the review specifically mentioned how they're reimagined. What's different about them?
Well, they're not just orphans waiting for a leader anymore. They're described as having these really specific, almost specialized quirks that reflect a world that's evolved. They're like guardians of the leftover fragments of magic.
So they have roles. They have purpose.
Yes. The critic says their interactions bring levity, but their struggles learning to trust each other, overcoming fears tied to their new roles. They mirror modern struggles of friendship and self-discovery. They feel like a real complex family unit.
That makes them much more interesting guides. And their journey sounds intense. They're facing enchanted forests and these harrowing shadows that emerge from the depths of memories.
Right. Which implies the villains aren't just external, they're exploiting internal weaknesses too. It's a psychological edge.
And that brings us to the antagonist. You can't talk about this book without talking about Captain Hook 9.
The ninth. Not just a pirate with a new hat.
No. You'd expect a simple revenge plot, but the review really stresses his complexity. What makes him so formidable? What's the fresh take?
The critic spends a lot of time on Hook Nines. He's not the mustache-twirling villain of the past. He carries the weight of his family's feud with the Pan lineage, for sure, but his motives are always in question.
So he's not just driven by pure evil.
No, more by a twisted, maybe even philosophical desire to control the balance between dreams and reality, not necessarily to destroy it.
So he wants a new kind of order, not just chaos. That's
Oh.
so much more interesting. A flat villain makes for a flat story.
It does, and the review says Captain Hooknags forces readers to constantly question the nature of good versus evil throughout the whole journey.
How does the author manage that without just slowing down the action?
Through his dialogue and his internal monologue, the review says Hooknags has this compelling internal logic. He actually challenges the idea that Peter Pan's original magic was purely good.
Wow.
That moral ambiguity just elevates the whole narrative. It feels like Wuhan is using this fantasy framework to explore some really modern ideas about inherited grudges and how we define justice.
That dynamic, this profound camaraderie on the hero's side, facing a philosophically complex villain, that brings us to the core intellectual appeal of the novel, the thematic depth.
Yes, this is that aha moment. The critics all agree the exploration of belief as a force is the single most striking element of the book. It's where it goes from adventure to, well, thoughtful literature.
Okay, so belief holds power. We've established that. But how does the book actually enforce that? How does Wuhan make it feel real and not just like a heavy-handed message?
It seems like it's integral to the actual physics of this new Neverland. It's not just believe and it happens. Belief is framed as this active, psychological energy that characters have to harness, often together.
So it's a collective thing.
It's a collective thing. The critic implies that those dark forces, the shadows from memories, are literal manifestations of eroded optimism, of doubt. When a character's conviction falters, the magic doesn't just get weaker. The shadows literally get stronger.
That is a deep mechanic. So the story isn't just asking, do you believe? It's forcing characters to see how their own beliefs shape their reality and, just as importantly, influence the people around them.
Exactly. It makes you, the reader, look at your own internal narrative. And that only works because the characters are so well developed.
Which brings us to the praise for that character development.
Yeah.
The review says every character is well crafted, with unique personalities, struggles, and real growth arcs.
You have to have that connection for the big themes to land. But the delivery, the writing itself, also got really high praise. The review calls Wuhan's style enchanting.
And it specifically mentions the poetic descriptions that paint the landscapes.
It does. But what's interesting is how that's balanced. You have these poetic descriptions, which can sometimes feel a bit detached. But then the critic notes that the dialogue rings true and feels genuine.
So how does that combination work? Poetic world, grounded conversation.
It creates total immersion. The poetic language handles the fantasy, the ancient magical landscape, makes it feel mythic, but the genuine dialogue grounds the emotional stakes. When the lost children talk about fear or loyalty, it feels real. It keeps the grand fantasy from becoming too abstract.
You're invested in their personal journey inside this epic world.
Exactly. And the pacing is key, too. The review says Wuhan strikes a perfect balance between action and reflection. You aren't just rushed from one fight to the next.
Which you need for a book with these kinds of themes.
You do. Wuhan builds suspense. The action keeps you turning pages, but the author knows exactly when to pause. And in those quiet moments, the reader gets to really think about belief and destiny and Hook's complexity. The big ideas get to land with real weight.
It sounds like a really sophisticated reading experience, but disguised as a classic adventure. So for the listener trying to manage their reading list, who is this book actually for?
The review breaks that down really well. It hits two distinct audiences. First, young readers. They're going to be captivated by the imaginative world, the adventure, the relatable characters. It's just pure classic fantasy fun for them.
But then you have the other side. For adults, it's a genuinely effective nostalgic escape. You get the comfort of Neverland and Pan and Hook, but it's all filtered through this more sophisticated lens that deals with, inherited trauma and belief.
And that's why it's for more than just fantasy fans. For anyone interested in a thoughtful story, the themes of resilience and friendship and shaping your own destiny, they make it a really worthwhile read. You get the thrilling adventure, but it's not an intellectually light narrative.
It's proof that fantasy can be deep literature. And the final verdict, well, it leaves no doubt, that 5 out of 5 stars rating. The critic concludes that the tale celebrates the magic of belief and the indomitable spirit of adventure.
And the ultimate endorsement, I think, is that it's a journey that promises to linger in your dreams long after you finish the last page. That really speaks to the immersive quality of the whole thing.
Okay, so let's circle back. To summarize the key takeaways for you, we have a world set 1,000 years later, a protagonist with a map to a realm of dreams, a deeply complex villain in Captain Hook 9, and this foundational theme of how belief actively shapes reality.
It's an adventure that uses nostalgia as a springboard, but it ultimately pushes the reader to look inward, to consider the real power of their own convictions.
And that leads us to our final provocative thought for you to carry with you. If this novel asks us to reflect on how our own beliefs shape our reality, and the main thread is this chaotic merging of dreams and reality, what does that mean for us in our own lives?
It really raises a question, doesn't it? What does it take for us to maintain that delicate balance between the aspirations of our dreams and the perceived limits of our reality? Is our day-to-day life defined more by what we believe about ourselves or only by what we can physically see and touch? It makes you think about the power of your own internal story.
We'll see you next time.